You're listening to Secrets for Scaling, a Gecko Board podcast that explores the growth secrets of successful founders and CEOs. In this episode, we spoke with Marc Biles, co-founder and CEO of Ratio, the maker of Briefed, Choose Wisely, and more.
To kick things off, can you tell us a bit about what Ratio is for those who might not be familiar, who your customers are, and what your business model is?
We are a software company based in Bournemouth on the south coast of the UK, and our mission is simply to make great things. We are a sort of small group of software companies, so there's 4 customer-facing products that we've built. We've got an AI tool for e-commerce websites. We have an underwear club for gentlemen who appreciate great underwear called Briefed. We've got a financial price comparison website for consumers here in the UK called Choose Wisely. And we also make the software that powers that website available to other personal finance websites so that they can match their customers to products called Choose Wisely Professional Tools. So the business models obviously vary dependent on the actual the product itself, but mainly we have monthly subscriptions that we charge to the users of the product, like the underwear club, for example. You just pay a monthly fee, we send you amazing underwear. And the sort of price comparison businesses, they run on a commission basis. So when a customer gets matched with a product and then goes and actually takes the product out, then we're rewarded with a commission.
How big is the team and how big is the company in terms of traction?
I was thinking about this. What is the metric for traction, just out of interest?
In terms of customer numbers or revenue, how do you measure growth, essentially?
Okay, well, the team today is about 19 people. And in terms of our growth, we probably look at revenue as probably being the top line. Our average revenue growth over the 3 years that we've completed trading is about 60% average year-on-year growth. And in the last 12 months up to the start of March, we'd matched around 18 million UK consumers with a personal finance product. So that's another key metric that we look at.
How's the team structured?
Pretty loosely. So we've got a pretty flat structure. Obviously, there's 19 of us, so the majority of the team, or maybe half the team, are sort of designers or engineers. So they're all working on kind of websites and software. I've got kind of a team of chiefs, like a chief creative officer, chief financial officer, chief operating officer that report directly into me, and then they've got their own team members pretty much. We're pretty fluid, so it depends on what project we're working on, who works together and in what kind of role. You know?
At what point did you bring on those chiefs?
Pretty much straight away, to be honest. They're not like chiefs like you get working for Goldman Sachs or somebody like that. They don't cost loads of money. They're just pretty much the first team members that we had on board.
But they're managers of teams, right?
That's right, yeah.
That's interesting that you brought them on right away. What made you do that?
I think some of them I'd worked with before, so I wanted specific people that I knew would be great in the role that I kind of envisioned they'd be in. Some of those people have kind of progressed into those roles, so they started off as maybe junior team members here and have proved themselves to be worthy of a promotion or been interested and kind of hungry for promotion, and so we've given them the opportunity to play that role.
What approach do you and the team take to collaboration? It's
pretty fluid. There's not a lot of discipline around collaboration, and it happens pretty naturally because of the nature of the products that we work on and how we work. Pretty much everybody across the business collaborates in some shape or form, even those that are focused on business as usual stuff. So the support people who look after us from an operations point of view, or the finance people, even those guys are constantly working to try and automate what they do so that it's simpler, takes less time, so that they can do other more interesting stuff. Because of the nature of the business being quite digital, quite software and website based, no one person's got enough skills just to execute a single piece of work on their own. So collaboration is kind of forced on them really more than anything.
With so many projects happening, how do you set goals and keep your team aligned around a common vision?
Well, one of the sort of most fundamental pieces of work that I do myself is I update the business plan every year. So our year end is the 30th of April. So for the sort of 2 or 3 months in the run up to the 30th of April, I spend quite a lot of time updating the business plan, trying to sort of guesstimate what it is we're going to be doing for the next 3 to 5 years. And the big part of that process is to come up with the objectives that I think the business should achieve over the coming 12 months. We use a framework called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results, which is sort of something I found on the internet and seems to work quite well for us. But the idea is that, we set some fairly simple objectives. We define some key results, which if we achieve those key results, we'll have achieved the objective. And then they cascade down through the team. So I define the business's objectives, and then I pretty much let the team define their own objectives each quarter. And I just try and gently nudge them in such a way that their objectives are going to meet the business's objectives overall over the course of the 12 months. That's how I keep everybody aligned in terms of trying to achieve what it is that we do as a business. I guess the key thing is just to keep stuff simple, really. So in terms of the business's objectives, we've got some kind of key developmental objectives like finding a new office space and stuff like that. But the main objectives for the business are to achieve growth and extend our margin across the group as well. So it's nice and easy to cascade big, chunky objectives like that down into teams and into the individuals.
How's the team structured in terms of products? Do you have a mini team for each, or does everyone work on everything?
A bit of a mixture. I have a sort of special projects guy who is pretty much like the point man. We send him out on sort of missions to prove concepts. And so he definitely has a sort of a project of his own that nobody else is working on. As I said, we've got some support people who kind of make the business work, like the operations manager and our head of finance, who are kind of involved in business as usual stuff. That probably sells them short. But everybody else is pretty agile and kind of works on what needs to be worked on. So our process is pretty much, we meet every day. We have a stand-up every morning, and we talk about what should be done. We talk about what was done yesterday and kind of what's stopping us proceeding. And through that meeting, we're able to prioritize effectively. And so we just pretty much work on whatever the most important thing is that we should be working on today. There's a bit more purpose to it than that. Once we've got the sort of business plan in place, we can then chunk that down into some component parts. So like a piece of work is probably like a month or two long in actual fact. It's kind of like, I've got an analogy I'm going to throw at you here. But it's a bit like a series of Game of Thrones. So you've got all the different characters all around the different worlds in the Game of Thrones world, whatever it's called. But there's a kind of through objective to the whole series that unfolds over a couple of months. And even though through an episode they've got kind of different stuff they're trying to achieve or a different place they're trying to get to, the whole series itself has a bit of a through objective. And that's kind of like how we work really with our projects. So at the moment we're working on building some auto advisor software so that the website can interact. This is on our price comparison website, sorry. But we're trying to make it so that it interacts and is quite fluid around the journeys that our consumers have. We found that as we made the website a little bit better, consumers come back time and time again. And our site pretty much we built it not envisaging that we would get so many repeat visits. So it doesn't do anything different the second time you come back. It doesn't remember where you left off with your journey. And it certainly doesn't hold your hand through an application process or while you're trying to figure out which credit card you should get. So that's something that we'll be trying to achieve over the course of the next 2 months or so. But obviously, if I sat down with the team and said, go away and build that, it'd be really difficult for them to do that. So we just break that down into its component parts. So everybody's got a piece of work to do that's half a day or a day long, and eventually, over the course of the 2 months, hopefully we'll move the needle on building better journeys for repeat customers.
When you're engaging in a project like that, do you typically take a step back with a team to explain to them how it ties into the overall objective, or does everyone just kind of know that intrinsically?
I think there's a really nice quote that I refer back to quite a lot by the CEO of LinkedIn, who says something like, if you get bored of saying it, you're probably just about saying it enough. So I remind the guys of the objectives of the business all the time. I do a monthly update, so I write a CEO report for our board, and I report back to the team as well, so they can see, they've got transparency over my work. We also use a wonderful product called Gecko Board, which gives us a real-time view of all these metrics. It's pretty much in, the objectives, both their own objectives and my objective, or the business's objective, are in everybody's face all the time. And I'd hope that they'd be able to sort of recite them word for word.
How would you recommend founders going about finding these great people to begin with? Like one, two, maybe don't already have people in their network that they would like to hire?
I think it's a long game. So you always have to be recruiting, basically. We were lucky enough that we have some opportunities in our local area to be a part of the digital community. So we've invested, even from day one, we've invested quite heavily in becoming as big a part of that community as we can be. So we have a lot of sort of socials and get-togethers and conferences in the local area, and we always partake in those. Over the years, it's meant that I've had to, let people have time off working, and we've spent, time as a team taking part and contributing to those things. And I'd hope that, longer term, that has given us a bit of profile in the town and meant that getting good people, attracting good people, and having a bit of a name around the community has been a lot easier. So I think do your groundwork is kind of tip number one on that front. I don't know how many hires we've done, say in the last sort of 5 or 6 that have been from the network, though, to be honest. So I think those have been through advertising. So it's just like, launching a product. Trying to hire the right people is exactly the same. You have to market your business. So get your website sorted, look attractive, get your culture straight, make sure that your business is good when people come in, that they want to be a part of the really exciting thing that's happening. Get your working environment right. It doesn't take much. You don't have to spend a load of money to get a great working environment. We don't spend huge amounts of money on making the office really nice, but we've got good desks, we've got nice seats that everybody wants to sit in, we've got lots of screens around with stats on, and we have a lot of fun as a team as well. We're not one of these kind of work hard, play hard businesses where we go out drinking every night, but we do stuff together. We do team building type stuff. We have a meal every on the last Friday of every month together. We kind of knock off at lunchtime on the last Friday and go and have some food and just play some pool or whatever. So, we just try and be a good business to work for. We try and be the kind of company that people would want to work for. And then you've just got to do a lot of hard work, a lot of interviewing, a lot of telephone calls, testing people in the right way, and keep at it until you get the right people. Our latest recruitment campaign that we started in September, we've had over 550 people apply for about a dozen roles. We've done over 150 interviews as of about an hour ago, and we've made 5 hires from that. So just in the same way that when you're starting your startup, you have to dedicate yourself to make your product really good, you have to do the same with your recruitment campaign as well.
How do you describe your working culture?
The culture is pretty relaxed. Like I said, it's not a kind of work hard, play hard. We're quite a sort of family-orientated business. It's probably because I'm getting old nowadays, so it's different from when I used to run companies when I was sort of 22, 23. I am pretty flexible in terms of the working, the time that people work. So I don't clock watch. They don't sort of punch in on the way through the door or the way out. And, obviously we have to be quite flexible now that people are getting married and having kids and stuff, at having time off. So we're pretty flexible about that, I think. I'd say it's quite a nurturing environment as well. We really care about the team. So if they've got any problems outside of work or whatever, we're quite supportive with that. But we're quite focused as well. It's not all sort of like nice sort of arm around the shoulder, nurturing type stuff. We're quite driven in terms of making sure that people are as skilled as they possibly could be at their job. And part of that means that they have to dedicate themselves to learning outside of work. And one of the things we look at when we recruit team members in are those people who are absolutely fanatical about what they do. Imagine you've got somebody who's really into baseball. They know the stats of their team. They know like the batting average of their starting batsman and all that kind of stuff. I'd expect, my engineers to be the same level of fanaticism as that about their job as much as they were about a hobby, Being diligent, attention to detail is a really key part of our culture as well. And as well as just people who are generally nice people to be around and enjoy what they're doing.
With that, what have been some of your biggest growing pains in terms of maintaining that culture?
I guess the operations manager was a really difficult hire. So because we're only sort of 19 people, our operations manager is sort of generally plugging all the gaps. So she's a lady called Emily. She makes sure that the office is open and running and that we have a nice place to work. So she's kind of like the cultural ambassador for the business, which, as a startup and now hopefully a scale up, the culture's kind of evolved the whole time that we've been in the business. I read a load of books about culture and I knew that it was really important to have a really good culture for a business, but it's quite an ethereal concept of culture. So I sort of just came up with a load of values that we would all live by and a kind of culture which would mean that we'd be really super productive and really good at what we did. And so I had something like 8 values that I'd come up with. They were all quite rubbish, quite honestly. and nobody could remember them. I got really frustrated. So the following year, I just swung back to just having no values or no defined values. But I came up with this mantra that I partially stole from Twitter, which was, if we combine talented people, have fun and ship awesome shit, good things will follow. That kind of worked to a certain extent, and it was good to put on our website as well, because we used a curse word, which made people realize that we're a bit different. But yeah, we've kind of gone a bit relaxed now. We're definitely after people who are good to be around. We try really hard and try and have some fun with what we're doing. So as I was saying, the culture's evolved quite a lot, and Emily's job is to basically embody that culture and make sure that the rest of the business sort of also lives those cultural values, which I guess when there's a moving target that you've got to hit, that's quite difficult. So yeah, she's got probably one of the hardest jobs in the business, and that was definitely a growing pain. So we unfortunately burned through a few operations managers who did that role, and Emily's really taken it by the throat and is doing a good job with it.
Switching gears a bit, it sounds like with the culture of the company that you have a good work-life balance. Would you say that's true?
I don't know that I'd say that. I guess the business and its success is really important to me. So it's worth dedicating a fair amount of my time and sort of mental effort to. But I think I'm pretty good on the whole. I'm quite disciplined. So I sort of try to get to work for 8 o'clock, and I get stuff done before everybody is in the office, and I get sort of set up for the day. And then I work pretty solidly throughout the day. So I tend not to take too many breaks. And then, come 5 o'clock, I head home, and I've got a baby, so I have to sort of take part in looking after him. I'm not great at taking holidays, so I probably take a month off every 12 or 18 months. And I have to take a month off because it kind of takes me a week or so to not be mentally at work, even if I'm not there physically. I think if you dedicate yourself to something as much as you need to make a startup work, then you're going to be involved in it a lot. Even if you're not on site, you're kind of involved mentally.
Definitely. I think it's hard to totally let go, to totally separate those two parts of your brain. And now that Ratio is about 4 years old, if you were going to give any piece of advice to founders who are just beginning to scale their business, what would it be?
I think, first of all, you've got to be really good at what you do, regardless of what that is. I think you've always got to try and be as good as you could possibly be. I imagine if you're trying to be an athlete or something, you'd do a load of training, and you'd work really hard. You'd do it every day, and you'd be constantly, doing research and taking measures to be better tomorrow than you are today. So you definitely have to do that if you're trying to go from startup to scale up. I guess likewise, you need to try really hard as well. I guess that sort of goes hand in hand with trying to be really good at what you do. But I always say to the guys here that great things generally aren't created by Einstein-level geniuses. It's just people who give a shit and try really hard that achieve success. Because there aren't that many Einstein-level geniuses around. If it was only those guys that achieve success, then we'd never make any progress as a species. I'm quite obsessed with detail, so I would definitely recommend that people sweat the small stuff, especially sort of transitioning from startup to scale up. I think so many things that can go wrong, and when you haven't got a lot of budget, or you've got a finite amount of funding, then when things go a little bit wrong, it can mean that you die as a company. So you've got to absolutely focus on your numbers. You've got to be obsessed about your customer experience, regardless of whether that's B2B or B2C or whatever the context. You've got to be as fanatical about product market fit and making the product work as you are when you're a startup. I think it's still an absolutely fundamental part. It's still a sort of, for us anyway, it's still a very evolving part of what we're doing. And the final thing is just to enjoy it, really. If you're just in it for the money or something like that, there's probably easier ways of making money than scaling a startup. It's going to hurt. It's really, really hard work. It's no less hard work than running a startup, actually scaling a business. And in many ways, you've got to be a bit more ballsy, because once you hit MVP, you've got to, I certainly sat around for a good couple of months thinking, well, it's working. What do I do now? And there's no books on how you scale up a business. There's no blogs about scaling up a business. There's loads about startups. There's loads about how successful companies started originally, and they're working in a garage and came up with a product that people were biting their hands for. And there's plenty of books and news articles about big companies that are, they know their pricing, they know their customers, they know their competition, they're just executing their business model. But that stage in between is it's pretty lonely, so you've got to really love it if you're going to do it.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping to accomplish with this podcast too, is to be able to get people like yourself talking about this scaling part, because I think there isn't enough conversation around it just because it's so difficult. So we really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights and lessons learned.
No worries. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you for listening to Gecko Board's Secrets for Scaling podcast. If you know of someone who you think would be a great guest for Secrets for Scaling, or if you want to share your own scaling story, email me anytime at shannon@geckoboard.com, and we'd love to have you. If you've been enjoying Secrets for Scaling, please consider giving us a review on iTunes. We'd appreciate it.